Trisha Paytas. If you've been on the internet at all in the past decade and a half, you recognize the name with a roll of your eyes. And even if you don't, there's a high chance that you've seen her in one of the over 30 reality TV shows she's appeared on. Or perhaps you've heard one of her songs off of her 10 studio albums.
Though I stray far, here you are, Jesus, my superstar. I love you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus.
Or maybe you've read one of her 11 self-help books, all self-published. All of these endeavors have been Trisha's attempt at gaining any sort of recognition or fame. Well, she's certainly not strapped for cash in her $3.7 million mansion in Westlake Village, California. None of her efforts have been as successful as making wildly controversial and blatantly offensive content she labels as comedy. Trisha Paytas' career mantra might as well be, any attention is good attention, as she has never seen a day without facing backlash since she first surfaced on the internet in the late 2000s. Edgy comedy is not a new concept, and it's the foundation for many successful comedians' careers. Topics such as rape, racism, homophobia, and ableism are the center of many jokes considered to be dark humor. Some comedians that use this type of humor are viewed as preservers of free speech and are applauded for saying the things that we all think but know we shouldn't say. Other comedians utilize dark humor to invoke change and self-awareness. Comedians can make jokes with darker undertones to point out flaws within ourselves and the systems we live in. It's like when you're laughing at a joke you know you definitely shouldn't be laughing at, and it makes you pause for a moment and reflect. However, what makes all of these situations work is that the jokes are based in some form of satire. There is still a huge difference between edgy humor and transgressive humor, and Trisha has gone far beyond what can be excused as satire. For something to be considered transgressive, it has to violate enough imposed boundaries to go beyond what is considered socially acceptable. Finding the line between edgy and transgressive humor is something comedians and internet content creators have struggled with for years, and it's in this very struggle that cancel culture is born. Cancel culture is the term used to describe the social backlash that people get when the general public has deemed that their content has gone beyond what can be defended as satire. It's a form of social accountability for those with larger platforms whose voices reach a wider audience. But because it's the internet, everything is subjective. People have different lines for what they consider to be too far. What someone might find morally wrong and offensive, another person might not. It all comes down to perspective and experience. Some people take cancel culture to the extreme by digging up random one-off instances of someone's past when they shared an uneducated perspective at the age of 16. Essentially, some people cause problems for the sake of causing problems and just getting attention. Or, some people think that more needs to be done to hold content creators accountable for their actions, and that internet shame is not enough for the great plagues against humanity that some people have supposedly committed. The opposing side says that cancel culture shouldn't exist at all. Some people think it was created by overly sensitive people who need to learn how to take a joke and get off the internet. They say cancel culture inhibits free speech and is trying to censor people's voices and opinions. They are firm in their beliefs that it is a danger to the very soul of comedy. As a political science major, free speech is one of my favorite amendments to the Bill of Rights. However, in some cases, like Trisha Paytas, the harm caused by the use of dark humor and transgressive comedy far outweighs the freedoms that they supposedly uphold, especially when it's only for the shallow sake of money and fame. Another common defense of dark comedy is that it is used as a way for people to cope with traumatic experiences that they've endured. In the article Laughing It Off, Catherine Layton speaks to comedian Alexandra Howell on why she tells jokes about when she was sexually assaulted. It felt like she was controlling how people reacted to her experience while simultaneously negotiating her own feelings about the incident. Many people make jokes about the tragedies that they've gone through because it's a way that they can control the situation and heal from the experience. The same goes for minorities that make jokes about the fact that they're minority. It's a way for them to not only cope with the discrimination that they face on a day-to-day basis, but to also take back their power and put the conversation in their hands. Dark humor quickly becomes used as a powerful tool. The caveat to all of this is that the jokes are made by the person that went through this traumatic experience, or by the minorities that experienced the discrimination. Trisha Paytas seems to ignore this condition, and instead of using the dark humor to uplift marginalized groups, she just ends up punching down and magnifying pre-existing problems. Whether it's race, religion, culture, gender identity, or mental illness, there is not enough time in the day to make an itemized list of all the controversies Trisha Paytas has been in, but there are some that stand above from the rest. In 2020, Trisha posted a video entitled Meet My Alters, in which she proceeded to announce that she has self-diagnosed herself with dissociative identity disorder, a serious mental health condition in which a person has various distinct personalities or alters that control their behavior at different times. Trisha says she came to this conclusion because she stated that she related to someone with the condition.
Are you diagnosed with something? Are you bipolar? Are you schizo? And I'm like, honestly, I've never been diagnosed with anything. The closest thing that I have self-diagnosed myself, I guess, is multiple personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder or both.
In the video, she then proceeded to impersonate someone with the disorder by pretending to dissociate and switch alters on camera. Throughout the video, she makes several comments on the condition, calling it crazy and talking about her own experience with it. Many people officially diagnosed with DID came forward to talk about the harmful misinformation Trisha was spreading and that her jokes were incredibly dangerous to the DID community.
It's hard to sit here and watch somebody, one, call me crazy and spread information that's very incorrect and damaging about our community.
In 2012, many YouTubers and content creators created characters for the purpose of skits and acts. Trisha introduced her own character, Trishy. In the debut video, Trisha dressed up in blackface and wore clothing and accessories from various Asian cultures. Trisha Paytas introduced Trishy as a Japanese pop star and proceeded to sing a song, somewhat in Japanese, while parading around mocking many items of Japanese and other Asian cultures. It was no surprise when she was immediately met with harsh backlash for the mockery and cultural appropriation. In a tear-filled apology video, she claimed that it was all for jokes and shouldn't be taken seriously. This is not the only time Trisha has been called out for cultural appropriation. Every few months, Trisha has a new phase in which she tries on other cultures or religions and creates a whole new persona around them. Once the shock value has worn off and Trisha has gotten bored, she moves on to a different culture/religion. Throughout her time on the internet, Trisha Paytas has also made many anti-Semitic comments.
Movies and books about the Holocaust.
What's the stereotype about Jews? Like, my cheap Jew boyfriend with a big nose. I don't say that.
Jewish people are cheap.
I like the stereotypes of, like, their noses.
Most people have just brushed this off as her being blissfully ignorant, but in a recent podcast, she admits that it was all jokes she hoped would get her attention.
I don't believe that people can be canceled. You have to go away to be canceled. But, you know, I've definitely trolled for money.
Yeah.
I definitely have said, like, whatever, Hitler's like, whatever. You know what I mean?
This seems to be the constant excuse Trisha uses to maintain her platform and justify her behavior. But with a platform as big as hers, the defense gets weaker and weaker as time goes on. Obviously, anyone with an internet connection and a screen can consume her content, but what makes it specifically dangerous is that her beach blonde, bright pink Barbie sense of style catches the eyes of younger kids. Underdeveloped brains won't be able to understand that her content supposedly isn't supposed to be taken literally, or that it's even problematic at all. The younger audiences that are drawn to her content start to think the harmful things she spews on a daily basis are okay. They are the same group of consumers that grow up to be the diehard fans of Trisha that will defend her to the death and make excuses for her behavior, such as, well, it was just a joke, it's only for fun, and her work is that of satirical comedy. But as we've discussed, there's a line between what can be defined as satirical humor. In his article, Tim Parks discusses the limits of satire by saying, since satire has this practical and pragmatic purpose, the criteria for assessing it are fairly simple. If it doesn't point towards positive change or encourage people to think in a more enlightened way, it has failed. But there has been no positive change that has resulted from Trisha Paytas' years of content. Many marginalized groups have been harmed, people's personal lives have been negatively affected, divisions have been perpetuated, and misinformation has been spread, all for the purpose of feeding Trisha's ego. Despite her content having no beneficial effect, she is still one of the top internet comedians and creators across many social media platforms. Why? Because people are drawn to disasters. They want to see just how far Trisha will go. What will be the final straw to finally kick her off the internet? Because even though it's clear she shouldn't be a role model, she is still making daily content across many platforms and getting the views and traction she so craves. And like a building on fire, you can't help but watch the entertaining chaos that is Trisha Paytas' internet career.